So today I'm going to talk about uh, the the various parts of the Heart Sutra. However one's up. Okay. Okay. So here we go. Um, and of course, the exact ending of the Heart Sutra of Gyate Gyate Hara Gyate Hara So Gyate Bodhi Svaha. This also, of course, is here it goes now. Here we go. Great. A little bigger. And I can, here it goes. Yeah, yeah, one more. And there we are. Okay, good, 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 good. But I'm not going to scroll. We don't need to scroll down to there now. But that's there's a beginning and the end. But the beginning, the end just summarizes what's come before in the sutra. Um, of course, most of you probably also know. Well, um, it's kind of funny because it says it's always said Heart Sutra. But in fact, it's really not Heart Sutra, it's Mind Sutra. The Chinese word for heart and mind were the same, and so it really should be the Great Wisdom Beyond Wisdom Mind Sutra, but it's not going to change. But anyway, that's the meaning of it. Okay. So Avalokiteshvara, when practicing deeply Prajna Paramita, saw clearly that all five skandhas are empty and thus relieved all suffering. I've gone over this recently before, but of course, you know, Avalokiteshvara is Kuan Yin. It's the Bodhisattva of compassion. When we do the full moon ceremony, we list three bodhisattvas. One is Manjushri, one is Samantabhadra, and one is Avalokiteshvara, and after that comes Buddha. And these are in order actually of different times in practice. So the sutra begins with bodhisattvas, but it ends with Buddha or Buddhas. Practicing deeply is kind of like sesshin, but it's people who were here last night. Uh, it's um, uh, it's really what uh, deep meditation is about. I'm forgetting a word here. Um, Shikantaza. Thank you very much. That's what I'm missing. Yeah, it's shikantaza. Shikantaza means practicing deeply. Okay, prajna, of course, it's the we say Heart Sutra. I'm prajna, but you know anyway, wisdom beyond wisdom is prajna. So what that means is it's wisdom. Usually, our wisdom is based on very intelligent thinking. So even though it's wisdom, it's still based on discrimination. And so prajna is a wisdom beyond discrimination, a wisdom that's not actually based on words. Paramita, of course, is perfection. There are six of them, as most of you know. Generosity. I'll just give the English words. Generosity, morality, patience, vigor, concentration, and wisdom. So we start with generosity and go to morality, which is also what taking the precepts is, which we hope to be doing in the fall. Um, I'm going to leave that for now. That's another whole talk. And James talked about that relatively recently also. The five skandhas, all five skandhas are empty. Okay, this also has been explained recently, but just to go over it again quickly, there are five. They are the ways that we receive information, external information, internally, which seems to be external. information internally. What by saying that all five skandhas are empty means that actually that's not exactly what's taking place, because they aren't separate. Okay? So form, the first one, form, is what is outside of us. So we say form form does not differ from emptiness. Anyway, so but I'll carefully repeat these. Okay? So form is what's outside of us. It's what we see, not what. And the next skandha is sensations, and sensations is our sense organs themselves. They work and they distinguish something. And of course, we say form, but form is just for sight. So each of those should be for sound and for taste and for smell, and like that, for example. But anyway, when we sense something, we immediately make a judgment without knowing we're making a judgment about whether something is desirable, undesirable, or neutral. Mostly everything is neutral. But there are some things we want and some things that we don't want. Perceptions is what we make of that information. It's how we see it in formations. The fourth is what we have thought of before. Our memories, our prejudices, our habits, are just any thinking patterns that we have and that we accept as being real. That's the fourth one. In the sutra, it's formations, and of course then consciousness, and that's of course the function of the mind. And so we go through all five of those steps. But when all five skandhas are empty, takes rid of the steps. And in a way, the skandhas kind of really are not actually the inside the mind, or they're not actually outside the mind, but they're in between that makes one thing into the other. And those are particularly empty. And those five skandhas are empty is when you have shikantaza. And it's when you have the object world and the subject world are one. Or you and I are one. Relieves all suffering is next. All five skandhas and relieves all suffering by the skandhas being empty is what relieves all suffering. Because, of course, discrimination is the source of suffering. How we think about things is what causes us to suffer. It's what Shakyamuni called the second arrow. So next, we're going to go next to form does not differ from emptiness. There's something also that so that we have gate, and then we have gate. The first gate is form does not differ from emptiness. The second is going to be emptiness does not differ from form. The first of these is also in Soto Zen. We have something called Tozan's 5 ranks. There are also Sekizan, who is also the author of the Harmony of Difference and Equality, also has something similar, but Tosan, but Dongshan, okay, formalize them even more. And the first rank is this: form does not differ from emptiness. This is what we practice when we're learning how to do zazen, and we're looking for emptiness. We're looking for emptiness. We're looking for enlightenment in emptiness. So when we sit, our mind becomes clear. We are. That's what we are kind of focused on. We're looking for nirvana. We can't help ourselves, and the Buddha did teach about it. Okay, And the Diamond Sutra, you all know the Diamond Sutra, you know about it anyway, has a series of 5 eyes, 5 ways of seeing the world. And the first eye is called the ordinary eye. This is the ordinary eye. It's the ordinary eye that I'm looking at you right now. The second one is the second rank, in which form, in which is understood that emptiness can only be found in form. So it's the same thing as when we study the self, is to forget the self. We find ourselves studying the self rather than studying Buddhism. We are studying why we do the things we do by self-discovery. Those are things that are not really taught to you, although they're hinted at or first roughed out in the 10 prohibitive precepts. And so this, in the Diamond Sutra, this is called the divine eye. Divine eye. It could look like it means being psychic. But actually, and it may, by the way, but actually it means seeing behind the scenes. We don't know. We have grown up unaware of what really is happening within us and how we cause ourselves to suffer. And so, without trying to do it, we practice this. No one says this and this and this and this and this in great detail, but we find out. This is the second gate, the second goan. The third is, then it goes to the next section. Form, by the way, it says after it says form does not differ from emptiness, emptiness does not differ from form, then it says, of course, form itself is emptiness, emptiness itself is form. This is, I believe, necessitated by Indian logic. You can't say that you can't say you can say the two are not different, or you can say the two are the same. And so that's why they repeat this. That's not a very good explanation, but it's connected to that anyway. Okay. All dharmas are marked with emptiness. This, of course, is the main point of our practice for a long time. All dharmas are marked with emptiness. So we study this when we read about or hear about why all things are empty, because everything identifies everything else. This is an intellectual understanding of it. But when you really understand everything is empty, that's understanding emptiness. And that's also synonymous with enlightenment. Then it tells you, however, three ways that they are empty. They do not arise nor cease, are not defiled nor pure, do not increase nor decrease. These are 3 ways of measuring why that's true. I'm not going to go over these today, but anyway, those are the aspects. So, and this is the third rank. Remember, form is emptiness is the first, emptiness is form is the second. The third is emptiness is emptiness. And this is a stage in our practice which we become very, it's kind of like, almost like falling in love. You fall in love with emptiness. You become infatuated with emptiness. You've met your true love, your true spiritual love. But however, and by the way, in the Diamond Sutra, this is called the Prajna eye, the wisdom eye, wisdom beyond wisdom eye. And of course, this is paragate, gone beyond. We've gone beyond form, gone beyond. Now, in the sutra, jumps over the next section that is in the five ranks, and that is the section in which we pass out of that and we return to form. In our practice, we return to form, and that fourth rank is called, well, I'm actually just repeated the same thing, is returning to form. But then with the Dharma, we begin to teach others. And therefore, in the Diamond Sutra, this is called the Dharma eye. And we start thinking about the practice of others rather than ourselves. Because having understood emptiness is emptiness, other people have not. And so we teach them. However, beyond that, it follows with emptiness that there is no form. And now I'm not going to repeat all these, but this is a list of a list of the. I guess I didn't bring them with me, so I can't see it myself. Actually, you can see me, but I can do this. Oh, anyway, I'm sorry. I'm going to skip it anyway. Anyway, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. No sight, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind. That leads no realm of sight, no realm of mind consciousness, no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, no old age and death, nor extinction of old age and death, no suffering, no causation, no cessation, no path. Okay. Up until no path, that lists all the ways that Buddha taught in the Dharma in the beginning. And now you realize that not only is there emptiness, but you realize the emptiness of emptiness. Emptiness is something that you can get stuck in. You can stay in love and only think about that, and your world is very, very narrow. And from there, your world actually begins to expand. When I was talking about what time is it, by the way? Okay, when I was talking about the Genjo Koan, there's a part where Dogen says, it is like being on a boat. It is like being on a boat and in the middle of the ocean or the sea, and you look all around you, it looks like the ocean is circular. But actually, the ocean has many, many, many more faces than that. So in the same way, we begin to study more than just the circular ocean. So therefore, what happens is we deny all that the Buddha taught, and then we say there's no knowledge, there's no attainment, so everything is denied. But with nothing to attain, and that's the next sign, with nothing to attain, there are also no words, and there's no usual idea of wisdom. But thus, the bodhisattva depends on prajnaparamita, which is, of course, the wisdom beyond wisdom. And it's the wisdom that is, again, not based on discrimination, done by the five skandhas. When you rely on this prajnaparamita, then the mind has no hindrances, because all the things that you believed in, you know what the hindrances are. You've heard them before several times, but of course there are three of them. As a matter of fact, there's a picture on the wall that doesn't show up in this light, but we've had out here, and the three hindrances are the source of our ignorance, and they are avarice, hatred, and delusion. Okay? What we want, what we don't want, or what we don't care about. Those things no longer exist. As a matter of fact, those things no longer exist prior to emptiness is emptiness. But so therefore, the mind is no hindrance. The mind does not cause you trouble. Okay? And without any hindrance, no fears exist. Because all our fears come from believing in the hindrances, such as not getting what we want or getting what we don't want. And there's more, of course. But anyway, no fears exist. The end of fear. Suzuki Roshi said, I don't have any fears, but if a lion was running towards me, I would run, which you've all heard before. I think it's in one of the books too. Okay, far beyond every inverted view. Now that goes back to the fourth skandha, because those are our formations. Those are our set ways of thinking. We no longer have any set ways of thinking. I mean, we are still here. We're still the same. You're listening to me, I'm talking. But still, we don't have this belief in our ways of thinking. That's why, and there are also called, now it's called, we translate it every inverted view, which means, well, actually probably a backward view. We used to first translate it as perverted view. Upside down view also is another translation. But we stopped getting things backwards. We are no longer pulled by the things that have always pulled us. Not in the same way. We don't change. We don't become anything, because in fact, when emptiness is emptiness, would be a time when you have the most charisma. And charisma is something you have to give up. You have to give up being holy. You have to begin up being spiritual. That's what going beyond emptiness is. One dwells in nirvana. There we are. Remember, now nirvana, of course, is the end of suffering. So all these go together. But ultimately, you have to give up the Dharma, because the Dharma is a set view. The Dharma is has become one of those inverted views, or a bunch of those inverted views. Okay? In the three worlds, of course, that's past, present, and future. All Buddhas. Now, this is the first time Buddhas are mentioned, so that means no longer bodhisattvas. Depend on prajnaparamita, repeating that again. Okay, based on things as it is, and thereby attaining unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment. This is beyond, like when we do the robe chant in the morning, far beyond form and emptiness. That's what enlightenment is. It's not enlightenment, in one sense, is kensho, so-called kensho, but actually for Soto Zen, it's not so important, because this is what real enlightenment comes down to, when all five skandhas are empty. And and now this then becomes the fifth rank, which is, by the way, far beyond form and emptiness. Okay? And this is, of course, Anuttara Samyak Sambuddhi, which we sometimes say and repeat. And in the Diamond Sutra, it's the Buddha I. And this is, of course, oh, I forgot to say back before this, it's Gyate Gyate Para Gyate. That's what I was talking about in the past section, beyond the Dharma. That's the Dharma I, but it's also going beyond that I too. And this is then, of course, Bodhi Svaha. Bodhi, of course, is enlightenment. Svaha means a lot of meanings, but anyway, a formal translation, it would be hail, but it means wow or great or hallelujah or any of those things. Okay, and there you have it. And therefore, know. Then we go to the next section, which is therefore know the Prajnaparamita is the great transcendent mantra, is the great bright mantra, is the supreme mantra, is the incomparable mantra. Now remember, now it's the Gate Gate is a mantra, but it's not a mantra in the sense of a magic spell. Mantra sometimes seems to mean that in various places, like abracadabra, but it's not that. It's a formula or a condensation. Okay. Anyway, now all this does, this part of saying that the Prajnaparamita, they're saying that they're kind of praising it in advance for you, so you'll get the point. But those things are just saying how it works and the things that it does, which removes all suffering. We're saying that for the third time here. Okay, as with the skandhas, relieving all suffering, and also taking away fear. Okay, and is true, not false. Once again, this is Indian thinking. You have to say, not Indian, I mean, but anyway, Buddhist thinking, I guess. So therefore, um, uh, thus proclaim the Prajnaparamita mantra, which is coming. Proclaim the mantra that says, Gate, Gate, Para Gate, Para Samgate, Bodhi Svaha. Gone, gone, gone beyond, gone all the way beyond. Hail enlightenment, which sums it all up. And so, have I just thoroughly snowed you, or you have any questions for it? Do you have a question to Dharma? Yes, Mark.
You said like way earlier we had that thoughts was basically, I'm trying to remember exactly. It was like inside of us and yet outside of us.
Well, no, I guess I didn't mean to say it exactly that way. Um, uh, no, thought. Well, I mean, thought is much more than that. But the way the inside and the outside are connected, the external and internal are connected. Subject and object. If you're the object of what of who I'm speaking to right now. Right? I'm the subject of this talk. Right? So from that point of view, what it is saying is that there's something that prajna is deeper than thought. Thought is wisdom. Let's say the best thought is wisdom. Let's say, but still it's thought. And so ultimately we learn that the real nature of reality is that state, and that's also the state of enlightenment.
So before we have thoughts, let's imagine way back when we're little tiny babies and you haven't had a thought at all.
Yeah.
You would say we're enlightened.
I pass on that one. but I will say, you maybe could say that, I mean, well, from our idea of thought, yeah, thought begins with language. So, but we perceive, but still babies perceive, but they certainly don't perceive in the way that we do, but they begin to, I think, I guess.
There's that long-standing legend, I think it's Hebraic, that before a child is born, before a baby is born, they know everything, and then an angel puts their finger right there to seal the lip. But I think, whether it's in Christianity, the adoration of the child, or certain Buddhist things I've seen, there is a reverence for, and almost for children, not that they're pure and new, but that they know that there is a spiritual, I don't know what it is, but higher level that they actually exist on, versus no, they're these, the opposite idea, which is that they're these blank slates. There's an idea that actually they have it. And, as we live more and more on earth, we depart from that. I don't know.
No,
Can I say something?
yes,
too?
yeah.
Alan, I remember a story from Tassajara. That first summer, I was teaching. The first fall, I was teaching these three young children that were in Tassajara, and one was a little boy who was about 5, and his mother said to me one day, my son just said the strangest thing to me. We were looking at a little bee on a flower, and he looked at his mother and said, we're all the same. she said, how did he get that? So maybe they do function a little higher.
Yeah, because as we get older, we develop discrimination more and more, which we need to survive.
Yeah, of course
the brain, the child's brain, and you'll see on the internet, they do these experiments where at a certain age, they can't differentiate between, it's very interesting, again, from educational thing, child development, how at a certain age, they, you break something in half, you say, oh, I have one cookie. And, you break it in half, and now I have half of it and you have half of it. Is there more cookie? And the child will say, yes. So they don't have those, they don't have that differentiation built into, developed in their brain yet. Our brains do develop. And so, there is a Zen to the newborn, I think.
Could be.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I pass, but I kind of think something similar. I've talked about the Adam and Eve too, even though that is a myth about that kind of situation. Also, God was trying to keep people from thinking so they'd be happy. So there's all those things, yeah. Mark, look at you're talking.
Yes, may I? It is a thought. People say this, I'm happy. I'm so happy. Are you happy? Yes, I'm happy. But it's a thought, because I think you're discriminating against sadness, correct?
Yeah.
It's the opposite. So, and we strive. It's in the Constitution of the United States, happiness, right? That's what we're striving for. And yet it's always out of our reach.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm. So, but I still like the idea about a baby mind. We're kind of striving for a baby mind in many ways, which is, I think it's a nice way to kind of think about it, because we're trying to get back to something we've forgotten, right?
Yeah, well,
and everyone forgets it because, well, we have to grow up, right? And find happiness. So, I think just going back to baby mind where everything is just whatever. It
Well,
might be a new way to think about it. Thank you for letting me say that.
you know, enlightenment, what we call enlightenment, is called off in different cultures has been called rebirth. There was a place in Greece where you would go and get reborn. Special kind of psychic place, but not psychic, not, but some place where you could experience rebirth. It's called Elysium, or like that. So,
Elysium, Elysius,
it's
Elysium.
Elysium.
Elysium?
I think Elysium. Maybe that's it.
Elysium.
Yeah. It was a cave or something, actually.
Or even just the idea of being born again, you know, in this Western society, what that means to people. Oh, John's raising his hand. Okay.
John?
I just want to make sure I understood kind of as a whole, but I wanted to say, I think you're talking about the Elysium well.
That's it. Yeah. Thank you.
So
And
I used to just in hearing it when I years ago first heard the Heart Sutra, and it talks about how all the 5 skandhas are empty, and before really having kind of like an intellectual understanding really of what emptiness is, I think I kind of felt like those things are inconsequential, and by stripping ourselves of those things, we're able to then reach enlightenment. But what I think I understand more so now is that all 5 skandhas are empty really means that all 5 skandhas are part of the Dharma, not to be stripped from, but rather to be fully experienced without the delusion of greed, hate, and delusion, and without our thoughts interfering and such. And so when that happens, then emptiness as a whole for us occurs, which is the falling away of self, and ourselves also being fully connected to the Dharma. And that is when the experience of enlightenment occurs, rather than the stripping away of these skandhas, rather connecting fully and experiencing them for what they truthfully are. Is that right? Or I'm trying to intellectualize this, and I know none of it can be intellectualized, but
it's and not necessarily so hard to not easy to answer, but it seems to me that that's the lesson that we get from the knowledge of the emptiness of the skandhas. So if we apply what we've learned, that would be the application of what we learned. Okay. So I wouldn't say the emptiness is the emptiness of the skandhas is what you just said, but I would say what we can learn from. It sounds like I'm nitpicking, but I don't think so. I think that but so therefore that's exactly how we learn and use from what Buddhism teaches us.
It's like using John, maybe it's I don't know if this is a good example or not. It might be too complex or off the base. But it's like when you learn a foreign language, and you go into a lab and you practice the language as if it's real, and you answer and repeat and everything. You learn it, but the whole situation is such that it's not a real situation. It's not one where you relate to people, but you are relating to a kind of empty form. So when you learn it, then you don't use it anymore. Then you go out and you use it with people and situations in the country, where you would actually have to pull all the names and stuff out of yourself at that point. Is that too far off base?
No. Okay. Matt's good.
no,
Yep.
I like that actually. Thank you, Jane. You always have a good way of I don't know, putting some thoughts actually into something tangible I can understand. So I appreciate it.
Matt?
Yeah. Peter, for the rest of you who don't know this, Peter has a habit of accusing me of thinking too much. And but when I hear discussions of emptiness and form and skandhas and all of this, my head wants to explode. And having dealt with listening to discussions of these things for the last 10 plus years, I frankly, Peter and Jane, I've never found them helpful. I've only found them to be enormous distractions that have created a waste of time in my life and a source of frustration. Now that may be peculiar to me, but I think it's such a disservice to talk about such things, and I'm just going to be candid about it.
Sure. Oh, just anything. But anyway, no, Matt, you haven't experienced it yet.
Yes, well, I mean, I assume that may be the case, but if I haven't experienced it yet, the point of discussing it is futile for those of us who haven't discussed it, who haven't experienced it yet, and I think it misleads us, that segment of us, in a way that doesn't injustice. And again, I know this is quite. I mean this to be assertive and not aggressive language. I hope I'm achieving.
We get that. We get that.
Yeah, yes, we do.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think, going back to what you were saying, Mark, earlier, that children, learn to live in the world, not just to be happy. They use their discrimination in order to learn what the world is. And they can't really learn until they figure out what hot and cold is and up and down is. And so they've fine-tuned their discrimination quality up until a certain age where they feel like it's starting to back up and not expanding. And it's like we expand to a certain point with this discrimination mind. And at a certain point, it starts being non-productive. And at that point, we start wondering about life and death. And that's usually around a certain age where mortality becomes more obvious for various reasons. And at that point, we start looking inward and trying to find the answers somewhere else. And we find discrimination at that point is a real handicap and not a help that it was in the earlier times. So I think it's just a question of time and the ripeness of a flower ready to bloom or not ready to bloom, rather more like a bud and rather than a bloom. So I don't think it's a total disservice, Matt, because I think when you're ready, you naturally will open and you naturally will take hold of something, just like a child. When it's ready, like Lee, I don't know if any of you remember Lee, who is from Thailand and was here for a while. And she went back and she's just had a baby and she's been putting up a lot of videos from the time it was just born. And now it's like 2 years old. Or almost, no, wait, I'm sorry, 2 months old. And it's lying there and she's videotaping it, looking and grabbing at things and figuring out what something is. And at one point, he just discovered he has 2 hands, and he's like, all of a sudden, what are these, And I think we're just like that. We're experiencing, but only when we're ready to. So for a long time, his hands were up there and he never noticed them. Suddenly one day, he sees 2 hands, and he doesn't know what they are yet, but he knows there's something connected to him in a way he can't understand. And so we're just like that. We have the mind of a child because we're in a world that we don't fully understand, but we're spreading out slowly and slowly and slowly. And at some point, when we're ready, we'll get the point. And so being impatient or in a hurry or whatever is, and despairing of not having it, is like uh, missing the point. So the idea is that everything is, what do they say in Zen? Nothing is hidden, but unless we're ready to see it, we won't see it. Like at some point, blue became a color, but before that, people didn't even see blue. So it's just, there's all kinds of stories about how when everything is here, but for some reason we don't see it and we're not ready to. When we're ready, we'll see it. So nobody can be forced or pushed or go beyond what they're ready for. So don't worry, Matt, that those things will unfold when they're ready to.
I'm not, I'm sorry, I can't raise my hand again. Oh, I guess someone unraised me. But just in quick response to that, it's not so much that I'm feeling in a hurry. It's that in retrospect, after my practice of so many years, and whatever experiences I've had, and I'm not sure Peter's accurate in saying that I haven't experienced things yet. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. But what I have concluded, that with whatever experiences I've had, if these things don't help me to live a life, and discussions about emptiness and form and skandhas and things like that, they don't help me to live a life. Sitting helps me to live a life. Mindful practice helps me to live a life. Kindness, compassion, those help me to live a life. All of this 2,500 some odd years does nothing. All of the discussion of all of those years does nothing to help me live a life. The language can be so simple, so basic, so direct. Peter did a great job last week of talking about the difference between realization and actualization. And realization being the experience of seeing and Kensho or Satori or whatever you want to call it, and then bringing that into your life through mindful practice being actualization. That's how I understood it without self-reflection. And the rest of it I just see as garbage. And I say this not so much for me, but for others, having to listen to this and then wash themselves clean of it eventually. Big deal if they end up coming to a point where they say, "Oh, I understand." Big deal. I mean, to understand all of this Sanskrit, all of this that's been handed down in volumes and volumes. I mean, my God, Buddhism is the most talkative religion of all time, and the whole idea is to get past all of that and just go out and be kind and suffer less because you're less attached to yourself and your likes and your dislikes. Oh, I've had my say. Thank you for your patience, everybody.
Yes, Jane. Jane's going to answer.
Oh, I was going to just say something, but I think maybe because of time. Thank you, Matt. Because of the time, we have two hands up, and we should go to them first.
Yeah.
And maybe if we have time.
Yeah.
Spencer or Chris?
I'll go. So I think about what Matt's saying, and when I listen to Buddhist scholars like Robert Thurman, things get pretty deep and wordy, and intellectual, and then 5 skandhas turns into 72 skandhas, and it's probably more than I want to understand, and I'm trying to work backwards to nothing, to direct experience. And getting back to the child, I always thought, when my daughter was beginning to be verbal, a long time ago, she pointed at everything and said this, this. So there was no differentiation. And when I try and get to a place where everything is this, it's hard. And trying to work back from sensation, perception, formation, and consciousness, and even being able to see this mental process, it's hard. I'd rather not know that process is going on, but working, understanding that process is going on, brings some awareness that I can let go of it and become, more of a beginner's mind. So I understand what Matt is saying, but I understand the purpose of the sutras, and I think there's a roadmap there to get to nothing. And I think when you get to nothing, which is not often, but I think there's a sumptuousness there of direct connection with the Dharma in that moment that transcends language, experience, and there's an immediacy to it. So I think that's ultimately what we're working towards, but I think there's a similarity to what a child experiences. And, I often think that there's a similarity to what animals experience. I've heard the phrase that, as the donkey sees the well and the well sees the donkey, that's the mindset that I'm trying to get to, but don't often get there. So sorry for my digression there. But
no, actually, thanks, Spencer.
Yeah,
That's really
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Good way, interesting way to think.
Chris?
Yeah, so I just had a couple things to throw in there. One was the thing about seeing blue. They actually talk about that in an episode of Radio Lab that's all about colors, and it is wild that, like, anyways, it's a real thing. And then oh yeah, so I guess my question, I know this is a question I've had for a while and I haven't asked it because it seems just kind of like, silly and maybe slightly academic, but if you feel like it's worth answering, then yeah, absolutely. But if not, then, we can just go on to service. But the question was essentially, so we say skanda, which I think is groovy. It's one of those things where it makes more sense to keep the Sanskrit word than to translate to English. And yet a lot of times people will translate it and chant it as aggregates. But I've also heard that a closer, more faithful translation of what the word in Sanskrit means is heap, like just a heap together. But when talking about what the skandhas are, and like the 5 skandhas, various, like the contact and sensation and something and consciousness, right? I for a while just kind of like played around, but I can't really get a good match of how each of those things is a heap of something. And I was wondering if you could say something to that.
Well, let me say that yeah, that's the I don't think that's important. Let me what I mean by that is um, uh, the translations sometimes don't help. So some things happen. I mean, obviously, I don't know. Arvind, is it? What does skanda mean before Buddhism to you?
Means nothing to me.
Well, did you have that word in your language?
Well, the first time I heard it was here, and I'm kind of like lining up with Matt right here today. So that's where my mind is today.
Okay. Let me say two more things. Let Jane speak here.
No, I'm just
Okay. One is what my intention is this. Well, first thing, Suzuki Roshi said, and I believe this completely. After you hear my Dharma talk, forget everything that you've heard. Okay? Because we're not trying to load your brain with things. We are trying to, but I kind of feel that if you have something put in front of you that you're using, that you're told that to be using, like the Heart Sutra, you should be told what it actually means. It's not really even now to improve your practice. The only improving of practice that we intend is keep practice. That's the only improvement. You can keep practice. You will learn things as they go. And sometimes it's very helpful because very, very often later in your practice, you will say to yourself, "Oh, that's what that meant." Happens all the time. So one famous teacher said, who I've forgotten who the teacher, but anyway, he said, "I've had 82 kenshos, and everyone disproved the one before it." Very famous teacher. Yeah. Yes, Mike. Mike, you will be speaking last today for the first time.
Well, I know. I'm trying to stop talking so much and listen more. But in relationship to what Matt was expressing his frustration with, I'm learning, to me, it seems like we need to be aware of everything, but not attached to it. It's again back to that cat sitting in the sunlight, licking its paws. You aren't going to be able to sneak up on that cat because it's totally aware of everything, but it's not attached to any one viewpoint. Because once you get attached to that one viewpoint, you're blocking out everything else. And so I'm wondering if that's kind of what they talk about, that everything's emptiness and form and the skandhas and stuff is. You need to be aware of these things because they are a part of life, but you can't be attached to them because they will distract you from the other things that you need to be aware of. Am I anywhere close?
Sure, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Like always, that's true. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Jane.
Matt, I'd like to just say one more thing, if you would. The sutras, I think, are very, very important for us to study, and not for the reason of gaining knowledge to put under our belt, but I think sutra language is very similar to poetry. It's a use of words to explain what can't be put in words. And so it requires another way of looking at the knowledge that's being laid out for us. And we can only understand it if we, at some point, we verify something in our own practice that we've read. And sometimes that takes 20, 30, 40 years when you read it, and suddenly years later, you look back and say, that's what they meant. And so I think it's a question of studying the sutras, understanding that the flowering of it comes much later, but you just put it inside and leave it sitting there, but don't get really attached to it. As Mike says, it's because then it becomes a block to you. So you just read it and let it sit there and let your whole being inside mature with it in some way. So that's what I just wanted to say.
Well, we've had a nice long discussion today. Thank you, everybody.